guys can hear me, we are out here in Big Sur today. We are going to try and photograph one of Ansel Adams' famous photos of Big Sur. Right out there, it was photographed in 1950, and our vantage point's not going to be quite the same as Ansel Adams because we don't have access to the lands that Ansel Adams has access to. So Adams was born in 1902 in San Francisco, and he lived his last 2 decades of his life here in Big Sur on the Monterey Peninsula. He is known for revolutionizing photography and going from pictorialism, which was more of an artistic form of photography, into something called straight photography, which focused on the details and the high resolution of the image to really capture how life really was. Adams was a pioneer of the zone system, which basically is a standard by which we photograph nowadays. It's a way of measuring proper exposures, and it consists of 10 different zones, with 5 being our standard gray card that we use today in film photography. So I'm going to attempt to model Ansel Adams' way of photographing by capturing Big Sur. Even though we don't have the same vantage point, we're going to try and get an image that at least feels the same as Ansel Adams. Since his work was very emotional, it had a lot of atmosphere to it, it really brings in a lot of feeling to it, even though it was considered to be something that was more documentation than art. So I'm going to adjust my aperture so that it's at the smallest setting that my light will allow in order to capture the most detail of the scene. First thing we have to do is take the lens cap off. So I haven't adjusted for my white balance, so I need to adjust my white balance. Clouds. My ISO right now is set to 100, and right now I am at f32, which I'm going to try that out at a 2-second exposure. I have such a high f-stop in order to get the most details, but my exposure time needs to be longer so that I can let in the most light. Adams, even though we thought he wasn't much of a photo manipulator, actually did a lot of manipulating in the darkroom. He was a big user of the dodge and burn process.
Okay, so I am sorry you guys all had to listen to that wind noise, but we are here now taking a look at some of the photos I flagged from the shoot out there in Big Sur. Now, unfortunately, I was not able to really get the same exact vantage point as Ansel Adams. Ansel Adams lived on the Monterey Peninsula for 2 decades, and he really had premier access to everything. Before most of it became private property. So I was able to get about as close as I could to that vantage point, even though Point Sur is that tiny little speck back there, and it won't be the exact same image, but we are going to take a look at it. So before we get working, we are going to just take a quick look at one of these quotes from Ansel Adams about how he really got the images he wants. And Ansel Adams said, "In my mind's eye, I visualize how a particular sight and feeling will appear on a print. If it excites me, there's a good chance it will make a good photograph. It is an intuitive sense and ability that comes from a lot of practice." So this is really key to the way Ansel Adams captured such amazing photographs in his work. He was able to visualize exactly what he was wanting out of an image. And considering that Adams was a pioneer in the zone system and was an absolute expert on knowing how to expose a film image, he knew exactly how he wanted the light to appear in his image. And with the black and white photography, you don't get the same tones and depth of contrast and color as you do with color photography. So this is one of the images that we took along with this one. I already know that I really like these two slightly darker images. They are underexposed, but that will allow me to be able to modify them in Photoshop. So I'm going to take those over there right now. So as I'm working with these two images, I'm going to be referencing back to the tones and the atmosphere of this image. Ansel Adams really had an amazing way of creating feeling in a landscape photograph. He also photographed people, so he was very prolific and was constantly shooting and working all the time. And he usually shot with a large format camera, meaning that the negative itself was 8 by 10 inches, which is basically a sheet of paper. And this allowed for prints and enlargements to be incredibly detailed, and every single part of it would be in focus. So we don't exactly have that type of range with digital photography, considering our sensors are a lot smaller, but there are a lot of advantages to digital photography too. And with this one, we were kind of running out of light. Probably should have gotten to Big Sur maybe an hour earlier than we did. But as far as weather, I think it was probably a similar type day, just about 70 years different. So let's take a look. Let's start working on this one. All right, I will be the first person to admit that I am really not a landscape photographer. So here's my interpretation of Ansel Adams' Point Sur storm on the Monterey coast. And we can really see some of the more details if we zoom on in, trying to capture that same sort of atmosphere that Ansel Adams had. So next up, I want to take a look at something a little bit different. Adams was a photographer who toured all over the western United States, not just California, even though that's what he's most famous for. And I can't resist taking a look at some photographs from my hometown, Tucson, Arizona. So Adams photographed so much out in the desert and all over the West, and some of his most famous photographs are from the West as well. I want to take a look at some of these images, such as Giant Saguaro and Saguaro National Monument, which are created a little bit earlier in Adams' career. And he spent a lot of time going all the way through the West, really documenting the landscape and the way of life out there. And if you've never seen a saguaro, they are absolutely magnificent. They grow only in a specific region of the world, which encompasses southern Arizona and part of a little tiny part of California and Mexico. And I am going to take a look at some of my photographs that I already have, and they are not going to be quite the same vantage point as Adam's photographs are, but I want to try and emulate some of his style with my photographs. All right, not quite the same, but that is a comparison between mine and Adam's photograph of a saguaro out in Tucson, Arizona. The last photo that we're going to take a look at is just a quick visual analysis of a photo you probably have never seen before. So let's take a look at it. Okay, so this is one of Ansel Adams' portraits, and this is of Maynard Dixon. This was taken in 1948 and taken in Tucson, Arizona. Maynard Dixon was a painter who lived in Tucson, Arizona. He was originally from Southern California and was with a group of painters that really painted the West in the 1930s through the 1940s. And I was really drawn to this portrait because it felt to me like there was just such emotion and feeling inside of it. And upon doing some further research, I learned that both Adams and Maynard Dixon really had a way of using light in their photographs that depicted how it really was out in the West. If you've ever driven through places like Arizona, Southern California, even into New Mexico and Utah, there is a quality of light that is different from anywhere else in the United States just due to the intense heat and the landscape. And for me, this quality of light is really apparent in this photograph. And this photograph was taken 2 years before his death. So for me, it really feels as if it's a symbolic dualism between this bull skull and Maynard Dixon standing there. And they're almost at odds with each other. This bull skull is representative of impending death and decay in this hot and abrasive desert environment, and death and Maynard Dixon are just there at odds with each other. And I love Maynard Dixon's expression looking at Ansel Adams. It's almost, you can only kind of see what he's looking at, but you can just feel as if he's wondering why Ansel is out there in the hot sun, standing there. And this is just such a true and real depiction of Western life. One of my favorite photographs. So to wrap things up, I hope everyone enjoyed something other than a presentation today and heading out to Big Sur with me. And hopefully you learned a little bit more about Ansel Adams and his style of photography. And just know that basically anything you do in photography now was influenced by Ansel Adams because he really wrote the book for how we photograph in a modern age. So just to review, here are my interpretations of Ansel Adams saguaros and also Point Sur. Not quite the same feeling. I'm not shooting with a giant 8x10 view camera, but I'm trying. Normally I photograph portraits, and this is definitely stepping out of my comfort zone. I encourage you to do the same. Thanks.